Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I'm a registered dietitian and running coach based in New York City. My goal for this podcast, aside from having fun, of course, is to demonstrate that there is no one-size-fits-all style of eating. Rather, there are many different pathways towards individualized health and sports performance. I explore this in my athlete nutrition profiles as well as in interviews with fellow dietitians on their areas of expertise. Hey everybody, welcome to my third Ask Me Anything episode. I can't believe it. I've only done 3 of these in this entire time that I've had this show. And, I asked for some questions on Instagram, and when I went to go put all the questions into the document where I keep track of these questions, I realized that I had a bunch of questions that I had never answered from ages ago. So my apologies to those people. I will try to get to this today as well. But thank you to everyone who did submit questions. We have a nice array of topics to cover. And before I dive into that, though, I wanted to give you all a bit update on stuff that's going on with me. I have been particularly quiet on social media, and the podcast has kind of gone back to being erratically produced, in part because I'm actually moving in 3 weeks exactly from today on March 31st. So if you have been listening to the show for a while, you probably know that I'm from Santa Cruz, California. My family's still there in the house where I was born and raised. My sister and her whole family, they're on East Bay. And we spent the whole last summer there, 3 months escaping the city and just really loving being out there with my family, getting some extra support as well, since having no help at all and no school and nothing else while trying to work with the kids is really hard. So, when our lease came up, in January, we decided, actually, we don't want to be here anymore. And I mean, it is a temporary relocation for various reasons, which I won't get into. But, and I mean, really, there's just a huge question mark over our entire fall. And it's very scary for a type A planner like myself to not really know what the future holds. But hey, these are very uncertain times overall. And this is kind of just an adventure as I see it, right? Where, I'm going through a huge purge of all our stuff. I've just been, in between seeing clients, just been like frantically going through all of our things, prepping for the and so much to do, obviously, as anyone who has moved with kids especially knows. But it's a nice opportunity to kind of start fresh, get rid of a lot of stuff. I don't know if anyone has seen The Minimalists on Netflix or listened to their podcast role or anything, but that definitely lit the fire in terms of my just wanting to get rid of all the stuff. And I have a tendency to hang on to things. That's putting it really nicely. So it's been a process for sure. I even started the process a while back of kind of going through everything, but yeah, so it's all very crazy. I'm coming off of a very long day of seeing clients, so my brain's a little fuzzy right now, but this was my opportunity to record this episode, and I just wanted to chat about a little bit about kind of transitions and move before we dive into the Ask Me Anything questions. I've actually lived collectively in New York City for almost 14 years, which is kind of insane to think about. And this time around, because the first time I had just graduated from college or grad school and didn't know what on earth I was going to be doing with myself, and got a job, partying, hanging out, and just living the New York City life as early 20-something. And then went traveling around, backpacking around South America for almost a year, and then ended up moving to London, which is where I ended up with my husband years later, but spent about 4 years there, and then went back to New York City thinking I was always going to go back to California, because my plan has always been, I'm going to live in New York, I'm going to be in California to be with my family. And I remember meeting my husband and being like, if you don't want to live in California, that's a deal breaker. He's like, I'm on board with that. But then we ended up kind of hanging back in New York again because I got into grad school here for nutrition, and just our whole path kind of just landed us here again. And, we got kind of stuck into it, and plans to move after grad school just turned into, I got a job here and he was working here. And then, plans to go back to California before starting our family turned into, we can't, kind of work related. We need to stay here. So then we were raising our family here, which ended up being an amazing experience. And I'm very happy with how everything has turned out. we have an amazing, amazing community here in Stuytown, which is where we've lived for about 9 years this time around, which is crazy. But and if you're not familiar with New York City, Stuyvesant Town is like this huge. It's Stuyvesant Peter Cooper. It's like this huge complex, or I don't even know how you describe it, but it's kind of like you feel like you're it's like this little bubble in New York with all these, beautiful little playgrounds, little parks, fountain, and it just feels like it truly is a community. And you step out your door and you're not in like crazy, noisy, big street. It's just all not insulated, but it just feels a little protected, different than just living on First Avenue, which I did for 6 months before, to Stuyvesant Town. But yeah, so it turned. We just kind of ended up being stuck in here, and I certainly am happy with our decision to stay here, and it's worked out well for us on both, professional and personal, family, all those levels. And we always got back to California, but somehow, we've always been in this weird kind of like year by year, never signing more than like 1 or 2 year leases, because we just didn't really know where we were going to be or where we were going to go. And yeah, so when our lease came up this time, we were like, you know what, it's time to try something. Now's the time, right? And again, I'm someone who I struggle with change. I hate moving. Oh my God, so much. Nothing worse than moving for me. I am like such a homebody. I like all my things in its place. I like to know where I'm going. I like to have a plan. So this is all really scary, but good. I think it's going to be good. And, Santa Cruz is my forever home. New York has felt like my home, though. I feel like a New Yorker now. But I was telling my husband, is this really the best version for ourselves? We've felt very trapped in our apartment, and just kind of trapped generally, or stuck, or however you want to think about it. And sure, it's fine. Things are fine in New York. The weather's finally waking up here and warming up. It's such a brutal winter. But yeah, I don't know. We're all ready for a change, as I'm sure many of you are, just after a year of COVID and craziness. So, yeah, we're packing ourselves up, and March 31st, flying to Santa Cruz. We're staying with my family again, my parents. Hopefully, we don't all drive each other absolutely insane. And as of now, we're viewing it as a temporary relocation. All our stuff will be in storage out in New York. For various reasons. There's a very high possibility that we will be back. Maybe not New York City, maybe New York area. So it's not the end of us in New York. So we'll just see what happens there. But yeah, this feels pretty major. It feels like something I've always had in the back of my mind, like from teenager. Like I will live all around the world, which I did, and eventually come back to California with my family. That is what we're doing. Even if it's not for very long, that is what we're doing. Pretty exciting. So yeah, so that's my big news. I am very much looking forward to running more again. We're not training for anything specifically or anything, but we are selling our Peloton, which is very sad, but we are going to be focusing more on trail running, just kind of being out in nature, which is really what we crave. I love Central Park and I love running on the East River and all that stuff, but I would take the beach, the trails, the mountains any day, obviously. I'm just kind of sick of it all, to be honest. No offense to New York, but I need a change. So that will be really nice. I'm also turning the big 40 in September. Oh my gosh. And I guess it's a little bit trite to be like, oh, I want to do a big race on my 40th birthday. But yeah, I kind of want to do a big race on my 40th birthday. So there. So I'm hoping me being fully vaccinated now, and I mean, hopefully a lot of people will be fully vaccinated by then, and it seems like more races are gearing up to go forward. Maybe, or hopefully I'll find a really awesome event to train for in the fall, trail run, maybe a trail marathon, maybe even a 50K. I don't know. I have not run a marathon since 2016, which is insane when I think about that. I don't know. I'm so wrapped up as part of my identity being a distance runner. I still call myself a distance runner, but I have not run more than a half marathon in a really long time. Actually, that's not true. I ran at the end of the summer. We did our like 20 something run big pace. So aside from that though, it's, I haven't raced anything more than half marathon. So I'm really eager and excited to get back into that. My body tolerates it. But yeah, so that's the deal. The girls will hopefully enjoy the transition. Hopefully I'll settle in nicely. And if it turns out that we're going to be there for longer, we'll of course get our own place. But it'll be nice to kind of see more of my parents. Ariel's going, funny enough, to the preschool that I went to as a kid, which is funny and crazy. And I will be home with my mom. So yeah, so big change coming up, and hopefully one that will be worthwhile and worth all the stress and the expense and time we're kind of pouring into this. But so that's my big update. Anywho, moving on to what you really want to hear about, which is the Ask Me Anything question. So let's just dive right in. How often should one recalibrate their sports nutrition plan? Is one question I got on Instagram. Great question. Really, it's as often as you want to. I mean, it's really up to you. I think that if something is working great or working really well and you're seeing improvements and success and strong performances, you're feeling good, you're recovering well, you're not getting injured, you're not feeling overly tired, or just seeing any other symptoms or problems like popping up, there's really no need to change it if it's something that you enjoy and feel good about. But at the same time, it never hurts to experiment and try something new. Right now is a great time. Really, this whole past year has been a great time, and I've been telling that to my clients because there were fewer events going on, kind of really low stakes. The pressure was off. People were just kind of training for training's sake and not necessarily training for specific events. So it was a really good chance to, just kind of, experiment and just futz around with your nutrition and see what works, what doesn't work, even if what you were doing before was working, or if you felt like you were kind of just like plateauing or you hadn't seen any gains anywhere. That's something you can play around with. There are new products on the market all the time. Maybe you discover something different and you're curious to try something new. And you don't have to like overhaul everything. It could just be like tweaking something. So yeah, I mean, I think the things to keep in mind, it's really just making sure that you're still meeting your nutrition requirements and you're fueling appropriately. You're getting enough in, you're doing it in a timely way. It's matching the sport event or whatever is going on. As long as you're doing that and as long as you're trying things out during training and not like right before or during an event, obviously, then yeah, I'd say go for it. But there's no like rule, like you must change things every 1 to 2 years. Like it's nothing like that. The one thing I would say though is it is always good to be somewhat flexible and to know that if push came to shove that you could do something different. If say something got lost or just if there was just something that happened that messed up your plan, especially if you're traveling somewhere, it's nice to know that you can do something different. Your body tolerates it okay. Again, those are not necessarily like common situations. It really just depends on what your event is and such. But yeah, so I'd say go for it if you're game and curious and just interested in trying something new. All right, moving on to question number 2. I'm training for my first 50K trail run. What are good examples of pre and post run foods? Another great question. This is another kind of, I mean, like all these questions, a lot of these questions are like with huge asterisks and caveats and all of that, right? So I guess my first question is, well, what time are you training at? What time of day is this going to be? What kind of well, I guess it's pre and post. Okay, so we're not talking about during, but what the start time of the run is important. Is it first thing in the morning? Is it later in the day? Like sometimes with trail runs, they start at, I don't know, in the evening. I'm usually in the morning, but really like, yeah, the timing is important because maybe it kind of determines what you're having for pre and post run foods. But I'd say just more generally speaking, another thing to keep in mind would be like how much time do you have, right? So if let's just say it was first thing in the morning, right? So you're probably looking to get like a really solid meal in 2 or 3 hours before. Some people, they have really solid stomachs. They don't need as much time to digest. Maybe it's like 1 or 2 hours before, whatever. Maybe it's right before you go, which I wouldn't recommend. And we're going for a nice carbohydrate-rich meal, but not just carbs. We want a little protein, some fat, all that stuff. So, because think about it, you're running for a really long time, and you don't want to get like super hungry. So we don't want to just be having only carbohydrates. We do want to have something that is a little bit balanced to fill you up. So, and then just as like a guideline, I mean, this is just kind of the general guideline that we often look at. It's 1 to 4 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight, 1 to 4 hours before the event starts, training or whatever it is. So it is also like in terms of how much, that's obviously weight dependent, age, what you're doing, how fast you're running. I mean, there are a lot of different factors that go in to make this more of an individualized thing, right? But okay, so let's just talk general foods though for the pre-run. I mean, I'm sure you've heard these very, common and popular things that people often go for, but, some form of an oatmeal, I would say like a loaded oatmeal. So meaning like we don't want just oatmeal made with water with banana in it, which is pretty much straight carbohydrate, or mostly carbohydrate. Again, if you're going for like a trail run, you're probably not going to be running that entire time, or maybe you're running a little bit more slowly. Again, that really just depends on who you are and what you're doing, what the terrain is and how technical, etc. But we want something pretty substantial that will keep you full, because you will get hungry at some point in your 50K. So, maybe you're putting a couple spoons of a nut butter in, almond butter, peanut butter, a sunflower seed butter, whatever it is that floats your boat. Maybe you're putting some granola on top. Maybe you're adding like banana or berries. Keeping in mind that certain fruits or certain things they are going to add more fiber. So you have to keep in mind how sensitive to fiber you are. And again, how much time do you have to digest? So the more time you have to digest, the more you can eat, like in quantity, and also the more like kind of heavier types of foods you can have as well. So heavier meaning like the fats or proteins, which are going to sit longer in your stomach, say carbs. But yeah, something like that just makes it a little bit more hearty and filling. But we are definitely going for the carbs. So the oatmeal in there, the fruit gives you the carbohydrates as well. Another really popular thing would be, say, some form of a bagel or bread, toast, whatever it is, with something on top of it. So, if you want, you could do like eggs or something like that, as long as you're getting, good amount, again, of the carbohydrate in. If you enjoy banana, I always recommend bananas because they're just so easy on the stomach and portable and just easy to do. It's also a really good food to just like top off. I'm so sorry. I've been doing clients all day. Like my brain's like mush right now. But it's a good one just to throw in. A banana's a good thing to throw in like 30 to 60 minutes before when you just need like a little bit more fuel. Top off. Is that what I'm trying to say? Oh my God. You get what I'm saying. But yeah, so any kind of like you could do your, a PB&J on a bagel, because a bagel is going to give you a little bit more carbohydrate than say just 2 slices of bread. Or you could have like 2 PB&J sandwiches, something like that. I've had clients do like a big rice bowl with eggs on top, and lots of salt, because keep in mind, like salt is something that we want as well. So if you're like one for something savory and you don't want a sweet breakfast, that could be something yummy. You could do some form of like, an avocado toast, but again, on a bagel. I mean, you could do other grains. I mean, you could do a savory oatmeal. You could throw an egg on top of that. There's just like so many different things that we can do. So, they're really like, the next question I got is also, what is the best breakfast before a long run? There's not really a best anything. We have to always remember when it comes to food choices, especially before a run, that it's really about your tolerance, GI tolerance, because again, some people are super sensitive, some people are not. How much time you have. So if you only have if you're going for like a long run and you have 30 minutes before you wake up and you just head out the door, like you're not going to probably tolerate like a huge old breakfast, and maybe you need to just grab like a piece of toast and a banana and just something simple, and then just really make sure you're like super on top of your nutrition during it. That's not ideal, and I recommend having a proper breakfast, but hey, real life, right? If you're on the weekend, you're working hard and it's a training run, like maybe you don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. or whatever it is. So I get it. Preference, taste preference, food preferences, dietary requirements, dietary restrictions, there are lots of things that dictate, right? What sport you're doing, logistics, what you can carry. Are you traveling? Are you home? There are all kinds of things like you probably don't want like, a rice bowl with fried eggs on top if you're in a hotel and you can't access that at like 5 a.m. or whatever it is. Maybe want some instant oatmeal, like pour hot water into, or a bagel or something, right? What your nutrition needs are, again, how big you are, your gender, like just so many things, right? But for pre-run, like you typically hear people like carbohydrate rich. That's often what you hear. So hopefully that helps. Just some examples. People often turn to bars too, Clif bars, Picky bars, RX bars, like, again, whatever it is that you enjoy that has carbs in it. So that's roughly what we're going for. For the post run, again, it depends on the situation. Is your appetite totally shot? Or are you ravenous and ready to eat? Or just have a healthy appetite? If you're not ready for real food, that's where like drinking something can be handy. And that could be in the form of a recovery shake. Not that I'm definitely a food first person, but believe me, there are times where a recovery shake is just an awesome tool and a great way to get some good carbs and protein in. So just again, on like a real basic level, what we're going for post run. And I'm assuming this is like a long run, or any kind of, run where it really requires like true recovery nutrition. If you did like a 30-minute recovery shakeout run, like you didn't deplete anything. I mean, you should still eat. And if you're hungry, obviously eat. But it's not the same as like going out for hours on the trail or doing a really heavy lift session or whatever the case may be. So protein, we often hear like protein really being stressed for post run. And it's true. We definitely need protein, right? And we're aiming generally for 15 to 25 grams. That's kind of like the average within 0 to 2 hours after exercise. But if you really want to be specific about it, you can take your body weight in kilograms and multiply it times 0.25 to 0.3 to get a really specific number. And that would be the gram per kilogram body weight. So that kind of just narrows it down within that 15 to 25 gram range, or sometimes it's a little bit above if you're a much heavier person or larger person. But yeah, I'd say typically if you're going for like 20 or 25 grams of protein, somewhere along those lines, along with carbohydrates, so part of a balanced meal essentially. What we don't want to do is like take one of those protein supplement shake things that have zero carbs. Like that is absolutely not what we're going for. We do need carbs, and a lot of people, they think carbs before and protein after, but we need a little bit more than carbs before, and we need a lot more than protein after. So again, just think mixed meal. So if we're going for, say, like let's say you finish a run and you're just like, oh my God, I cannot think about food right now, but I can take this recovery shake. Or if you don't want to do a protein supplement, you want real foods, but you want to drink something, that's where I love smoothies. That's like, I recommend smoothies all the time in this instance, because it's relatively easy to just like sip on, you hop in the shower. Like sometimes I even make it and then hop in the shower and then like sipping on it or whatever. But it's pretty easy to kind of get a liquid down, and then you can eat when you're ready. So like I make my smoothie, for instance. You could use a protein powder if you want, nothing wrong with that. Or you could just do like the protein supplement by itself, shower, and then eat a real meal. But if you wanted to kind of make a meal out of it, then you could do like, I usually do like a plain Greek yogurt, like a 2% or full fat or something. I personally use the 5% Faye. I've noticed I shop at Trader Joe's, but the full fat Trader Joe's has less protein in it. So I tend to go for either the 5% Faye or like the 2% Trader Joe's or 2% Faye yogurt. Regular yogurt's fine too. You don't have to do Greek yogurt. It's just a little bit lower protein. But yeah, so I throw a protein in as my main protein, and then I mix some almond milk in there just because, I don't know, it feels a little too heavy sometimes for me when I do regular milk. And then spinach and frozen berries and banana, and I'll do either a chia seed or a ground flax seed. You could also put nut butter in there to add just a little, some healthy fats and protein. I'll throw some cinnamon in there, and in addition to like the fresh spinach, sometimes I'll do some frozen cauliflower florets just to get some more veg in. But you certainly do not need to put veggies in this. And it doesn't have to be this complicated either. I'm just giving you an example of a smoothie that I typically enjoy and often recommend to clients because it's just an easy one. But yeah, so if you don't have an appetite, smoothies are a good one. Recovery shakes, bars, whatever you can kind of get your hands on. It also depends on like where you are. Like, are you at a trailhead with like a long drive ahead of you? Like, are you like in the middle of nowhere? Are you finishing at your door and you can pop right into the kitchen, right? So we always have to, again, think about context. I like harp on this all the time with my clients. Context is everything. So where are you? If you are at a trailhead, you're riding in a car afterwards, like definitely keep stuff in your car. Keep protein powder that you can mix with water in the car in case you want it. Keep some bars. Make yourself like a sandwich in advance. Keep it in a cooler. I mean, whatever it is that, again, that works for you. Stop at a restaurant if that's an option. I mean, lots and lots of things we can do. In terms of what to eat, in terms of foods, it really can be any meal that you enjoy. If we're going straight to solid food, like if it's breakfast, brunch time, you can, I mean, I always love eggs. I'm a big egg person. So I'll have 2 or 3 eggs with a wrap or toast or some other starch. You could do starchy veggies like roasted sweet potatoes or beans or legumes or, I mean, really whatever it is that you like. If you want to get some veggies in, great. If you're just like the side of vegetables want to vomit, then please don't force them in. You will survive going a day without vegetables, I promise you. Because often on these long run days in particular, your system can feel a little funky. And yeah, it's important to kind of listen to what sounds good, what's appealing. So if you're craving like a burger and fries, fine. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Or whatever it is that you're having. If you're just really tired and you want to make something fast, I'll make a turkey sandwich with mashed avocado and or cheese. And if you want to make it interesting, you can throw hummus on there or throw pesto or an olive tapenade or, I mean, really whatever, right? Pickles, I love marinated. You probably are craving salt after a long run of some kind. So I'll often have a pickle. Some people drink pickle juice. I love marinated artichokes, olives. I'll throw those on the side of things because they're just tasty. But it really can be any kind of meal that you like. But kind of thinking back to those protein goals we talked about, the 15 to 25 grams. So just to break it down quickly. So an egg, for example, is around 7-ish grams, depending on how big the egg is, around 7-ish grams, 8 grams protein. So if you're having a couple of those, so let's say around that's 12 grams or so, 13 grams such, you're adding a slice of cheese on there that brings you up to about 20 grams. You're adding some bread or something, some kind of grain or wrap or something that bumps it up a little bit more. If you're adding anything else to that mix, you can go even higher. So it's not that hard to get there. You're having 3 eggs, that's around 18 to 20 grams of protein. So then you slap on some other stuff and you can get there pretty easily. So if you're doing any kind of animal protein, like a meat or a fish or whatever else, it's pretty easy. You equally can, of course, make this vegan, vegetarian. You just have to keep in mind you need a little bit more protein overall to meet your needs. But yeah, hopefully that kind of answers your question. But yeah, I mean, good examples of post-run food could just be a normal balanced meal is truthfully what it is. But hopefully those guidelines help a bit. All right, I really rambled on that one. I'm sorry. If any follow-up questions, please just shoot me an email or hit me up on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, and I'm happy to clarify anything. All right, we already talked about what the best breakfast for a long run is. Again, it really can be whatever you like. And, let's say you have a little bit more time, if you want bagels, lox, and cream cheese, or you want an omelet with toast or potatoes or fruit, whatever, you can have all those things. It's not there's no rule that you must have a bagel or you must have oatmeal or something like that. It's just kind of, again, what works for you, what sounds good, what meets your dietary preferences and all that jazz, right? I know for me personally, I'll often have kind of a small breakfast and then breakfast number 1 and breakfast number 2, pre and post. And that kind of subs in for a morning snack and shifts my lunch slightly later. And that I know works for me on certain days, depending on my schedule is. But equally, you could have a solid breakfast, wait a couple hours, or even 3 hours, have a banana or a snack right before, and do your long run and make sure you're fueling properly during with the appropriate stuff that works for you, and then have a meal when you get back. So lots of ways to do this. There's no one right answer, which of course because you listen to my show, which is all about, hey, there's no one right way to do this. But yeah, there you go. All right. I've been diagnosed with osteopenia as a 30-year-old runner found from abnormal blood work. General tip. So first of all, I'm sorry to hear about that, but it really isn't the end of the world. We certainly can work on things and make sure that you are healthy and that your bones remain strong. Also, just FYI, if anyone doesn't know what osteopenia is, it's the precursor to osteoporosis, which is a bone disease. Um, if you have any type of bone disease like this, obviously that is not good for an athlete because you are at much higher risk for stress fractures, just other bone injuries. So not good, right? But the good news is that through certain exercise, strength work, and certainly through nutrition, this is something that, we can at least prevent more harm being done to the bones. And we can kind of help prevent further loss of bone mass. And really, like, as maybe, I don't know how much you know about bone health and how all that works, but we're essentially building up to our peak bone mass throughout our life, and it kind of peaks at around this time. I forget when it is, if it's like late 20s, early 30s, maybe it's more like in the 20s. I forget exactly. It's been a while since grad school. But I think it's somewhere around there. And then it kind of gradually declines. And that's where it really, like there are increased needs for certain micronutrients relating to bone health as we age. And the recommendations for doing strength work and, weight-bearing exercises, as you often hear it, that is to preserve your bone density or your bone mass. So in terms of general tips, well, hopefully on the exercise front, you're working with someone to make sure you're doing all the right stuff. You're not overtraining. You're doing a variety of things. You're not running too much. You're, getting some good strength work in to kind of help with that. And then on the nutrition front, well, there are lots of ways that, you can be at increased risk for bone disease or bone health problems, osteopenia and osteoporosis. But often one of the most common ones is just not getting enough nutrition. And yes, it might be specifically vitamin D, calcium, protein, that related to those things and some others. But a lot of the times it's the result of just chronic underfueling overall. Actually, my last episode, I haven't released it yet as of now, but it will be out soon. Maybe before this one, not sure. But we talked all about relative energy deficiency in sport, otherwise known as RED-S, and we go into bone health and recovering from injury. So I definitely recommend that you listen to that episode to get more information on that. But yeah, I would say the first step is really, making sure that your exercise habits are in a healthy place and supportive of your goals to prevent any bone injury and prevent, further loss of bone density, number one. Number two is making sure that you are eating enough. And when I say eating enough, I mean overall calories, so energy, but also eating enough in terms of the different macronutrients and micronutrients. And I don't mean to say that you have to count everything, start being obsessive about it, but there are ways of determining kind of overall protein needs, the timing of protein intake. Obviously, it's important, and I assume you got this tested if you got abnormal blood work, but, making sure that your vitamin D levels are okay, or even if they're on the low end of normal, you probably need to supplement. So that is one area where we often do recommend supplementation just because it's so hard to get it from real food. But yeah, so, vitamin D probably is going to come in the form of a supplement. In terms of calcium, that's something that we want to get more from food. So really making sure that you're including calcium-rich foods in there, getting enough protein, doing weight-bearing exercise, getting enough in overall, spreading out your protein throughout the day so it's not just like clumped in one section of the day or one meal or whatever, but getting really high quality or high, as we say, high biological value proteins in. And yeah, that's kind of just like real general tips. I know I'm kind of glossing over a lot here, but I would kind of point you towards the episode that I will be putting out soon on RED-S, because we do go into it a little bit more. But yeah, hopefully you get better soon and we see some better, DEXA scan results for you. All right, moving on to the fifth question. What are easy, healthy recipes I can make in the crock pot / Ninja pressure cooker for meal prep? I do not own a crock pot or a Ninja pressure cooker, to be honest, but I do have an Instant Pot, which I think is kind of similar. I will say my husband is kind of like takes ownership of Instant Pot cooking. I don't really, he's like really obsessed with it. I just let him do his thing with it. But I will tell you what we've been doing in the Instant Pot, and maybe I think some similar things can be done in your tools. So for us, we do a lot of bases for bowls. We throw together a lot of bowls. Like, we'll basically in an Instant Pot, we'll make some form of a grain or beans or something like that, rice, etc. So for grains, we'll actually, what have we done there basically? I don't know. I cook a lot of stuff on the stove, to be honest. But I would say any kind of grain, if you're doing, like, everything can be cooked in these things. Like, you could do farro or rice or quinoa and we've done all those in Instant Pot too. So making like a big batch of that, we've done black beans or chickpeas from dried. It's just like a really quick, easy way of doing dried beans, although nothing wrong with can. But I find that it's really great to have just a bunch of like components or ingredients that you can use to make a nice balanced bowl for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So it's just nice like meal prep to have in the fridge. So like you could do veggies. I think the other day Eric did some green beans and corn on the cob. I would then cut the corn off and throw into our bowl with like various things. We did some wild rice. No, we do. Yeah, wild rice. I did like basically a bowl with wild rice, black beans, corn, some sort of a sauce. We kind of sauteed real fast, just some beef and included seasoning in it. And again, those are all things you can also do. I know in the Instant Pot, I'm not sure about the professional, but yeah, just like some general things. And then we had some roasted veggies too, we threw in there. And yeah, just made a little bowl, add some sauce, really easy. But I think like soups, stews, chilies, things like that are really handy. Anything where it's like you just hit the button and forget about it. I think that's something really great. I know you asked specifically for recipes, so that I'm really bad about recipes. As I tell my clients, I'm really not like the dietitian with like the beautiful blog with all the beautiful recipes and the long stories that go with it. I mean, I can point you in those directions, but I don't have that myself. I'm like really like a throw it in a pot kind of gal and just like see how it comes out, which usually it comes out fine, but I don't follow recipes that much. So I'm sorry I can't help you there so much, but I would say that even just like for basics, you don't really need a recipe. Like if you're making rice or quinoa or that kind of thing, and for meal prep, then you really can just take all those components and put them into a bowl or a container or whatever it is you're eating out of, and like throw a fun sauce on top. And it doesn't even have to be a homemade one. You can put a dressing or a pesto or whatever, and just like have a yummy meal that way, But another thing we like to do is oatmeal. We've been doing a lot of steel cut oats with banana, cinnamon, and a little milk. And that has been fantastic. Eric will like just switch it on in the morning and make like a double or triple batch, and then we'll reheat it. Like add some. I've been really into the RX nut butter, so I'll like put a packet of that in, which makes it super filling, and I'll add some berries or something. And that's a really nice breakfast and pretty fast and easy. So that's all I'll say about that. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to point to recipes right on a podcast anyways. I guess I can link to some places and some dietitians that I enjoy. I will say like the places I tend to go to generally for recipes, like I really like the New York Times cooking. I don't know about this. I'll have to circle back to that one. Okay. Clearly I did not prep in advance for this, by the way. I'm just kind of talking through these. All right. So let's move on to the next one. Back to protein. Lots of protein questions today. How does an active person determine the amount of protein they actually need? Well, generally speaking, for active people, we're kind of in the 1.2 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight range. And just as comparison for, healthy sedentary people, you're in the like 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram. So we have elevated needs as active people. It obviously depends on how active you are. Are you doing like a few 30-minute workouts a week? Are you an endurance athlete training for an Ironman? Are you an ultra runner? Are you training for a marathon? Are you doing a lot of lifting? I mean, it's like there's a lot of overlap in what range I would give you depending on what's going on. But obviously, you don't need 2 grams per kilogram if you're like doing like 3 or 4 30-minute workouts a week. That's kind of a little overkill. I mean, for the most part. Again, that's a gross just generalization. Again, nutrition needs to be individualized, so please don't take anything I say to be like the be all end all and answer for you specifically. These are just kind of general. This is just general info, okay? But yeah, typically we're in that 1.2 to 2 grams per kilogram. If I were working with like someone like an ultra runner or even like a marathoner, depending, like, maybe you're in the 1.4 to 1.8 range, but we're always working within ranges. And again, I don't want you counting grams. Like, that's just such a not fun thing to do, to count anything. But we can learn what protein rich foods are. And, 1 ounce of a meat or whatever, like, that's around 8 grams of protein. So you kind of just determine, okay, well, if I get 5 or 6 ounces of salmon tonight, like, that's a huge chunk of protein, and that meets how much percentage of whatever my protein needs are. So again, this is all body weight dependent. It's dependent on how active you are, etc. The other thing we want to keep in mind is, as I mentioned earlier, is we really want to be consuming our protein and trying to reach our protein goals throughout the day. The goal isn't just to hit the number by the end of the day. Like, yes, that's great. But if you got most of those grams in, like, at night, which I've seen, that's not going to help you. Okay, there's only so much protein your body can actually process and use at one time. So we really want to be aiming to get it in at all meals and snacks, just eating, some protein in various forms. And again, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to eat meat, you don't have to eat fish. Like, there are just so many ways of getting protein. There are little bits of protein in all kinds of different foods. So, you don't have to stress about that per se, but all too often I see people having, like, especially if you're not doing dairy, let's say, which is fine, but, like, let's say you're using like an almond milk, which doesn't have protein in it, and you have oatmeal and that's it, or like fruit or something. That obviously is not, and you're doing that post-workout, and especially after like a hard workout, like, that's not the best choice. Kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, like, there are ways to have the oatmeal or add an egg on the side or put a bunch of nut butter in or whatever it is that you're going to do to, like, boost the protein content. So just trying to kind of add that in. Also, protein keeps us more satiated. So, we also want to get it in because we don't want to be starving 2 seconds later. Better things to be doing than just be eating constantly all day, although I love eating all day. But, there are other things to be done. So that's just kind of a really general answer to that. Hopefully that helps. All right. As a vegan, what should I be careful of? This is one of these really old questions, so I'm not really sure specifically what that question was getting at, but maybe I'm going to interpret that to mean, like, what should I make sure I'm getting that I might be missing, or I'm not sure. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I realize I've been talking for a long time and I have to go pick up my daughter at daycare. But in a nutshell, there are certain micronutrients, iron, B12, calcium, vitamin D, that we have to watch out for, because in many of the plant-based foods that you're eating and in many of the animal foods you're not eating, you're more likely to miss out on these things if you're not careful. So you can absolutely be an extremely healthy and an extremely high-performing athlete as a vegan. No doubt about that. It's just you want to be more mindful about what you're eating and make sure you understand what's in foods, where you can get certain nutrients and such. Okay. Protein, of course, that's something we harp on all the time, but it's not a concern. You can absolutely get proteins from plant-based foods. It's fine. Again, you just need to be really on top of it. And you also need a little bit more of it, which might lead to more calories overall, which may not be a bad thing because, especially if you're training hard, you need a lot of energy, but it's just something to be aware of. And all I'd say is just also not falling into the trap of thinking that something is healthier just because it's vegan. I'd say most people are aware of this, but, a lot of people are like, oh, it's vegan, and they eat a lot of vegan junk food and all of that. So, people become vegan for a wide variety of reasons. But if it is for health reasons in part, you obviously want to make sure you understand that the best or the greatest gains in terms of health, they're not going to come from eating like vegan junk foods. It's going to be coming from eating whole plant-based foods, which you don't have to be vegan to enjoy. Like, vegans don't own that. You can have a very plant-forward diet and enjoy all of that and eat some animal products as well if you want to or not. But yeah, so I just say that's another thing to be careful of. Okay. And last but not least, what is your perspective on cheat meals or cheat days? I am not a fan. I don't like that word cheat. You don't need to designate 1 or 2 days a week to be quote unquote bad or to, eat these foods that you're quote unquote not supposed to eat. I mean, I put these in air quotes because, truly you can eat whatever you want whenever you want. I mean, in a nutshell, you can. It really is up to you. And I know it depends on what your goals are. Oh, but Claire, what if I want to lose weight? Oh, but I'm training for this, yeah, I get it. Okay, I get it. But we don't want to fall into this like all or nothing mentality. We don't want to fall into this restrict binge pattern. We don't want to create rules for ourselves of things that are allowed or not allowed, things that are good or bad. I was, translating that to I was bad today. I was not bad today. Like, we don't want to think in those terms. Food is food, plain and simple. I know it's not. I get it. It's very complicated, actually, for many people. But we don't want to think about it as cheat days. If you want dessert on a Wednesday afternoon, randomly, that is okay. You don't have to call it a cheat day. You can just eat the dessert, and that's the end of the story. Okay? If on a weekend you have a super healthy big salad and nice and balanced and it's really delicious and you're not in the mood for dessert and you do all these things, you don't need to call it like some special great day of eating. Like, it was just another day of eating. I want you to think about on every day what you actually want to eat. Yeah? Okay? Actually want to eat. Not what you should eat or have to eat, supposed to eat. I mean, yes, I do want you to think about what your body needs on a basic level. Like, obviously, if you're just eating like French fries all day, every day, like that's you're not going to, not going to meet your nutrition needs there. You're not going to perform well. But I would bet you will not feel good. And so I often am trying to guide people like, what makes you feel good? At a certain point, eating all the junk food in the world is not going to make you feel good. And I see that in people who like eat so much on their cheat days that they just feel ill. But then they deprive themselves so much during the week that it's like, it makes them miserable and they like just go back and forth. So I would say that dependent on what your goals are, like you can be selective. Maybe you don't need to have all the things. Maybe you can choose 2 or 3 instead of like every single thing in front of you. You can think about what's actually going to make you feel good. You can think about what sounds good to you right now. But there really is no rule here. And again, this is one of these really nuanced conversations that just comes down to what you as an individual have going on, what your goals are, what your history is, and all of that. But yeah, in a nutshell, no, I do not recommend cheat meals or days. I want you to enjoy all of your food. I want you to be eating food that you enjoy, period. Like, even if it's healthy food, it should still taste good to you. If you're like force feeding yourself to eat something, like, let's figure out something else that's more enjoyable. All right. I will stop my ranting now. Hopefully that helped. I'm sorry I was rambling so much today, but that's kind of, I think those are all the questions that we got. So hope you're all having a great week. Would love to hear from you if you have any follow-up questions, anything at all. And I forgot to mention, by the way, that me moving to California does not affect my work at all. I mean, I am going to be taking a whole week off, but I'm all virtual anyways. That's the beauty of what I do, is I can take it on the road. So I will still be podcasting, probably at some point. I haven't kind of lined up. I've kind of done all my interviews and we'll kind of see where that goes. But I will be continuing to podcast. I will obviously be continuing to see clients as normal. So hit me up if you want to work with me. As always, I'm really appreciating all the ratings and reviews that I've been getting. So please keep that coming. And any other feedback, I'd love to hear from you guys. All right, have a good one. Talk soon.